Hello, good afternoon, everybody. It's nice to see so many of you here so promptly, unlike me. Um, so I hope you've been enjoying this week's timetable of activities that we've had for Safeguarding Adults Week. And this afternoon, we hope to bring you something just as exciting and informative, and hopefully you'll go away with loads of knowledge and information. And if you're anything like me, just wanting to go and find out a little bit more about something that you either know something about or a very little bit about or nothing about, but it's hopefully going to give you loads more information. We have got Doreen and Ali, who are social workers from the Romani and Traveller Association. I hope that's the right name for yourselves, who you work with. They are going to be spending the next hour and a half telling us about how we can get the best out of our conversations with people when we're working with them who come from the Romani and Traveller communities. I shall hand over to you, Doreen and Ali.
Thank you.
Thank you, Marcia. Are you popping the presentation up? Yeah. So hello everyone. Thank you, Marcia. So I'm Doreen Dev. I am a social worker. I'm the AMP lead and AMP hub team manager. I work for the City of Wolverhampton Council. And I also have Romani heritage. My mum is Romani. Ali, over to you to introduce yourself.
Yep, I'm Ali Shell. I'm actually in your neighbouring local authority over in Bratton Forest Council, and I'm the designated social care officer for children and young people with special educational needs and disabilities. And similar to Doreen as well, I come from a Romani heritage as well, and is part of the association. So thank you.
Okay, so the aims of today, we're going to tell you a little bit about our social work association, the Romani and Traveller Social Work Association. We're going to give you some history and context. We're going to talk a little bit about the impact of the perceptions of Romani and Traveller people and families and communities. And we're also going to talk about what all of this means for us really as adult social workers and practitioners. Just kind of, I always say, it's a bit of a caveat. This isn't, we're not going to be able to give you a manual of how to work with families. We talk about some practice tips, and hopefully we'll provoke some thoughts and reflections. And speaking for myself, I speak from my personal experience with my family and my friends. There's so much difference and variety, isn't there, Ali, in communities and families, that we don't want to kind of mislead you into kind of thinking that, if we talk about sort of cultural aspects or rituals and traditions and those kind of things in any great detail, it would be wrong to assume that that would be relevant to all people that we connect with. So really it's about recognizing differency and diversity within kind of Romani and Traveller communities and cultures.
Yeah.
Okay. And just to comment, it's quite interesting in terms of the levels of confidence. And I just kind of want to say that even I'm not extremely confident. I don't think we always are as social workers and social care practitioners. But if it's any reassurance, the aim of today is just maybe to increase that confidence, maybe inspire some curiosity to help you in your practice. Next slide, please. Just want to mention that I know we're not in June, but every year we do have a Gypsy, Roma and Traveller History Month. And in June of this year, the theme was Heroes, celebrating inspirational figures from communities and their contribution to society. So there's lots of people in our society you may know who have heritage. Charlie Chaplin comes to mind. If anybody is interested. But yeah, I just kind of wanted to highlight that. Is that something that you recognise in your local authority or local area? Is it something that your organisation has recognised in the past? Yeah, that's good. 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 And also today is International Men's Day, isn't it? So I just wanted to say thank you to all the men in the room for everything that you do. as we're on the topic of celebrating. Next slide, please. Okay, so yeah, sorry, this is a bit self-indulgent, let's say, but I just kind of wanted to share with you who my heroes are. And this is a picture of my nan, little Marge, and my mum, Josie. So yeah, I just wanted to share with you that they are my inspiration. And this is our logo. So we're going to talk to you a little bit about the Romani and Traveller Social Work Association. This is our logo. You can see in the background, so like the middle bit, that kind of gives you an insight into what the Romani flag is. So we have a flag, don't we, Ali?
Yes, we
and
do.
you can see the green. The green symbolises the land, the blue symbolises the sky, and you can see the wheel, basically, which I think that's pretty obvious what that wheel is, wouldn't you say, Ali? Yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. And then you've got the gypsy wagtail bird, and there's a symbol there at the bottom. So those leaves, basically, they symbolize, so when I think it's probably more traditionally, maybe not so something that occurs in this way currently, but basically what kind of groups of travellers used to do is when they would roam, they'd leave kind of indication along the road of where they are going to, so their kind of fellow family members and people part of the group can kind of see those symbols. So it might be a pile of leaves next to a tree to kind of indicate where they're going along the road. So our social work association, we've been going since June 2020. I can't believe it's been 5 years, Ali. I think
No, it's gone very fast.
hasn't it? And it started very simply with a shout out online back in the day when we had Twitter. It's called something else now, isn't it? And there was a call out from Alison, not you, Ali, the other Alison,
Not me,
Alison
the
Humes,
founding member.
the founding member. She called out on Twitter, really, because she recognised that there were Romani and Traveller social workers out there, and we wanted to come together to create a much needed, safe and peer-led space for us to kind of share our experiences, support each other, because it can be quite tricky, can't it, in this profession? You can evoke a negative response sometimes, unfortunately. But in the main, it's very supportive in the association, and I must say my current local authority that I work for are fantastic and really supportive as well. But we developed some aims, which was we wanted to reform social work in Romani and Traveller communities, providing training like today. Here we are. Thank you for having us. Wanted to create some best practice guidance. We wanted to promote equal representation of people within social work agency structures, develop research of our own as well to inform and improve social work practice, which we do. We have some wonderful allies in the associations that have an academic background. So we're quite a small group, aren't we, Ali? But we have some fantastic academics, Pete Irwin and Dan Allen, who have created some incredible research, informed by community members and us. So it's quite groundbreaking, really, and marks a real shift of how previous research has gone, which was carried out quite often by academics about us and not with us. And as you know, that's not how we like to roll as social workers. As I'm talking, sorry, I'm just wanted to say, because for me and Ali, we're just kind of talking out to people we don't know and we can't see. So if you've got any comments, please add them. We'll include them as we discuss as we go along. And we also wanted to promote the role as well and be role models, and kind of maybe inspire people to become social workers themselves. We've recently developed a webpage. It's not that old, is it, Ali? And it's still developing.
Not at all.
But
so any feedback as well would be
yes,
helpful,
we
as well.
welcome
what you need and what you might find helpful as well.
Yeah, there's some resources on there as well, which are really helpful. But yeah, please check out our website. So as I was saying, this Dr. Dan Allen, he's social work background. He carried out some research. This was shortly before we formed as a group, but we've benefited from this research quite significantly. And he carried out some research. It was with children's social workers, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So he interviewed social workers, and he showed them an image, basically, which I'm going to show you. And he asked them, I think it was about a kind of a safeguarding visit, and he asked them what their kind of thoughts and feelings were about the image. So that shouldn't say AMP, by the way. That should say, I think, safeguarding social worker. But I used this slide previously when I was delivering to AMP, so sorry about that typo when I forgot to amend. But I'm going to show you an image now. If you could go to the next slide, Marcia. So you're undertaking a safeguarding related home visit to this address. A concern has been raised by a community nurse that the family are neglecting to care for an old lady who lives there. Whilst you're viewing this image, what kind of things come to your mind as a social worker or social care practitioner, or a professional in the community? You know, this is the road that you're visiting. What kind of things come to mind as you prepare for this home visit? Please speak out or add a comment in the in the chat if you're willing to share.
Because we all do have thoughts or initial observations that we make when we're visiting families, and initial reflections of how we think a visit might go.
Yeah. What might you need to prepare for if you're visiting this road?
Sometimes it just takes a little bit of time for comments to come through. That's right. So immediate level of bias. This looks like the street I live on, although nothing like the estate I grew up on.
So there's a level of familiarity in terms of where you're living now, but maybe a bit of reflection of very different to where you grew up. Okay. Yeah.
Any other comments?
Yeah, it does look like a very nice area to live in, doesn't
Look like
it?
an average area. It does make me think though, where would I park? Because they're all double yellow lines all down that side of the road.
I was waiting for someone to say that. Yeah, absolutely. Where would you park? Like,
well, there are shadows on the opposite side of the road, so I imagine that it's parking on one side. But yeah,
yeah.
But my immediate thing would be where to park.
Oh, sorry.
It's okay.
No, I often get those thoughts as well. And usually when they're double yellows, it means you're normally near to a big town, doesn't it? Like you're in a fairly affluent area.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that the general consensus, isn't it, is that it's a normal average sort of place. It probably nicer than some areas as well.
Yeah.
So somebody says they wouldn't have any preconceptions about the house.
Wouldn't have any preconceptions. Yeah. Also, the neighbours might have issues. Yeah, you might want to think about, oh, do I need to hide my badge? As an AMP, I'd be very aware of maybe houses being quite close by and people maybe being able to hear what might be some very challenging doorstep conversation. I'd be looking out for twitching nets and curtains and such, and trying to respect the person's privacy that I'm visiting.
And Alison, I see you've put as well, wouldn't really have any preconceptions about the house I was due to visit. And that is a really important reflection as well, because I wonder when we move on to the next image whether that thought is still there, whether there is still no misconceptions there, or it'd be interesting to get your views on the next slide, I think.
Yeah, and right. Oh yes, this is the next slide. Sorry. Yeah. So the next slide is, ask yourself the same question. What would you be thinking about in preparation if you were visiting this home? And I think Becky makes a really valid point that she'd be thinking in the previous image, you'd be thinking very much about the family and looking into the history of the people that you were visiting. So your focus would probably be quite person-centered. So yes, this image.
And give your honest thoughts and reflections as well, because it's all about exploring those thoughts that we have, because that's the only way that we can then move forward, isn't it? Because we all have preconceptions around certain issues.
Yeah. Anyone feel comfortable to share maybe what you'd be
and we won't
thinking
be
about?
offended either.
No.
We won't be offended.
Good, Jane.
So don't
No.
worry.
No.
Yeah,
Absolutely
somebody
won't.
says that if they'd feel like it was a community that they weren't familiar with, but may have concerns about their safety. Somebody else has said that they'd be aware that the area looks quite industrial, so maybe not conducive for private and empathetic conversations. And it looks like a lot of builders' vans, so maybe busy with lots of traffic.
Yep. It's interesting, isn't it? How that's a really, really good point. I think that you feel like you're visiting a community rather than an individual or a family, and how that might affect how you approach the situation. I think that's a really interesting reflection. Yeah. The industrial comment as well is really, really helpful, and I'm glad you've raised it, because we find that many sites tend to be in areas that we wouldn't ordinarily choose to be in, but that's as a result of suitable areas, non-industrial areas being available. So there might
We
be
often
sites that
see. Oh, you were going to say what
No,
we
you
often
go,
see
Ali. You go.
sites next to like waste sites or next to tips, because equally, if we have found, I found even when I grew up in a small little village outside Northampton called Badby, and there was a sign, there was a planning permission for a gypsy and traveller site to be built, and there was an actual sign up that said "Say no to the traveller site." As you drove past, everyone could see it. So often they will, sites will be proposed in fairly nice areas, and people complain so much that they don't agree, so that the only option is then to go into the less desirable areas. So that's an interesting reflection.
There are a few more comments in the chat. Would you like me to just go through those?
This is brilliant.
Yeah.
Please, Marcia.
So somebody said that they'd probably be on alert, but they usually are when they're in the community. Somebody would feel anxious about their position as a person with perceived authority. They'd worry that they would not be welcome. Who would be the person to speak to before the visit to facilitate permission for entry if required? So that's what they'd be thinking about, who they would need to speak to. And that somebody else has said that they'd be nervous, but no more than usual. And I think for myself, as a Black social worker, I've got preconceived ideas about what I think about Romani and traveller families think about me as a Black person, as well as a social worker. So I would probably be wanting to have a visit with somebody else, so that there was maybe two of us. And also the lighting's not very good. So on these dark winter afternoons, I would probably be a bit more cautious about going in the evening as well. But that's just me that's just me.
And the very real issue of where would you park? We
Where
said that.
How would you find what caravan they were in? It's not like doors that are numbered.
Yeah.
To be fair, even if I was visiting, I might have a bit of anxiety around that as well.
Yeah,
and
because you wouldn't want to breach
the
family's confidentiality in terms of, you've got to be careful introducing who you are and where you're from, although you'd want to be quite open and honest about that. But at the same time, that's a really kind of difficult balance, isn't it, to have? Yeah. So I think as well, quite a common thing we hear is that people would automatically think they can't go alone, that they'd worry more about their personal safety. And we kind of need to explore that really, and explore what that is based upon. Is it based upon evidence relating to the family that you're visiting, or is it about preconceived ideas? But also, is it about practicalities? Because like Ali said, there are no door numbers. How would you know which trailer to approach? So yeah, really good feedback. Thank you. Any other comments before we move on? And has that given us something to kind of think about?
We've had a couple, so pre-plan, arrange the visit so they're not surprised you are visiting. I think that is really important. And I don't drive, so I'd have to think if a taxi driver would want to pick me up and drop me off. Yeah, that's a really good point, actually.
Yeah. And what does that say really, about how Romani and traveller families and sites are perceived by wider communities. And if you think about, for you, Georgie, thinking about whether or not you'd be able to get a taxi driver, imagine what that's like for Romani and traveller people as well, as they are quite often blocked from receiving services that many of us take for granted and wouldn't have to think about. So yeah, if you find it difficult to get a taxi to drop you off and pick you up there, what if you lived there and needed a taxi? Tricky stuff, isn't it? Thank you. Are we ready to move on? So this is just kind of, yeah, relating to what we were just starting to kind of unpick, really, is just, I would like you to just take a moment about what do we know about Romani and traveller people? And if you knew nothing at all about the communities, so, you know, going on your levels of confidence, some of you are fairly confident, so probably come with some knowledge already. But if you didn't have that knowledge, what might be your first impressions based on social media and internet research, as we see a lot of things in the media about Romani and traveller people? So yeah, just take a moment to reflect on that. Feel free to share if you want to share. No pressure to share, likewise.
Well,
But like
I've
Ali said,
just done
we're
a
in a safe
poll.
place. Yeah.
I've just done a word cloud.
Oh,
Oh,
nice.
brilliant.
So if people could type in.
Oh, the wonders of modern technology, a word cloud. How fantastic.
So can you see the results in front of you?
Yes.
Okay, so we've got
Strong.
community-based, family ties, living in caravans, strong. Any other responses? They come in, yeah, they do come in. Big weddings.
Yeah, we are famous for our weddings.
Weddings and funerals are very significant, aren't they?
Yeah. Yeah.
Social media, traveller, closed community.
Yeah.
Women.
Traditional, strong women. I don't know if that's meant to be strong women or stronger women. Clean. Stereotypes.
It's interesting you say women though, because I feel like a lot of the things we see come from women in the media. Like, I don't know, I like to think I'm young, but I spend a lot of time on TikTok, probably too much time, and it's a lot of time it's Romani or traveller women speaking out, which is really positive.
Yeah. Yep. That's interesting. What does platforms mean? Sorry.
I don't know if it's meant to be part of another statement.
Okay.
It might have split up.
Okay. Yeah. Community, family ties is so, yeah. But I can tell that we're in a room full of social care professionals, I think. Yeah. If I was to ask this question in a pub, with people who didn't know my heritage, I think the response would be very different.
But do you know what? It's nice to get a mixture. We've got a mixture of a lot of the strengths in there, a lot of those sort of like you know, like big weddings, what we're sort of known for, and yeah, not too many negatives, which is also really positive.
Yeah.
And I think we're going to touch upon this, aren't we? We do talk a little bit about the negatives, because it's important to recognise some of those the discourses that are out there regarding us. But actually, we want to think about the real strengths within the community as well. So we like to take a balanced approach.
Absolutely.
Hard workers.
Very hard workers. Entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Slide.
So this is we've drawn some examples from media, really, and this is really to kind of recognise the impact that this has on Romani and traveller people, to see this kind of representation and messages about themselves that are portrayed in the media, and to really kind of focus on how that might affect individuals and families, and then how that transfers into how we as professionals, representatives of the state, our local authority, or for whatever organisation we work with, how that kind of affects interaction with us on both sides, really. But the first one, it was a article in the Times, and it came up on my or came to my attention on one Saturday morning. I remember it vividly. And it's this notion that society panders to travellers. And I took real issue because, yeah, he said indulging those who claim to be nomads by giving them designated sites and ethnic minority status has gone too far. Well, we have got ethnic minority status. It's outlined in the Equality Act. I don't know how that has gone too far. But yeah, I just wanted to share really the negative impact and the emotions that evoked in me. Quite a lot of rage and anger. The second example, this is from, so I work for the City of Wolverhampton Council. This is back in 2019, but there was quite significant negative reaction to a proposal about a traveller site, which there was a fundraising event to raise funds to fight against this traveller site. Quite a lot of opposition in the community, and it was very uncomfortable, really, because the City of Wolverhampton consider themselves a city of sanctuary. We celebrate diversity, and here we have two MPs who I read as being very proud as punch, proud of themselves for raising money to fight against this traveller site. The other issue as well that I take quite what do I want to say? That is another issue, is that traveller as an ethnic minority status should be written with a capital T. So I thought, if you're going to criticise us, you could at least get your grammar right. As a newspaper, I'm really relaxed about grammar day to day, don't get me wrong, but I think if that's your profession, you could at least get it right. So yeah, that this is an article that stuck to me, and there's a video on YouTube as well of the public meeting that was held about this and the public reaction to this proposal. And I must say, I think the council officers at the front of the meeting that were leading the meeting did a very, very good job of managing the situation. But it's just really interesting, the kind of the anger and the emotion that it evoked in the local community. You know, the thought of having a traveller site near the area in which they lived. Next slide, please. You're probably already aware of the situation with Pontins, who had a list of common Irish names that their customer service call handlers were asked to deny access to the park or deny bookings based on people's surnames. And of course, the Irish non-traveller community were also very offended by that, quite rightly. That was challenged quite significantly. We talk about it a bit later on in the presentation. And just wanted to mention, because it's quite interesting, I think, for us, that with the kind of the negative messages that we see and hear in the media about Romani and traveller communities and families, in contrast, this, what I see as an ever-growing way of life. I think people refer to it as van life. There's lots of videos of YouTube that people get really positive responses and about living a nomadic lifestyle. It's celebrated as being more environmentally friendly, kind of going on the open road and being a bit off grid just seems to be the sensible way to go. It's kind of economic. It seems like a lot of fun, quite adventurous. So it's interesting that van life is celebrated, but Romani and traveller communities and families aren't, in contrast. And I think more recently, I think that some communities are kind of finding it difficult, having van lifers kind of park in their area and kind of live roadside and stuff. So I'm not saying they've got a completely easy time, but in contrast and in the media, it does seem to be celebrated rather than kind of challenged. I'm not supporting the fact that it should be challenged. I'm not saying it shouldn't be celebrated, but I'm just saying that the contrast is very revealing, let's say. Do you have any comments on that, Ali, or anything else to say on those slides?
No, not really. I think you've explained it very well. I know Georgie's put in the comments. I think that the article is telling of the general rhetoric towards the other in at the moment, and the platforming of those with extreme views. I'm struck by the disproportionate amount of time that is given to the behaviour and viewpoints that I personally consider to be really un-British, and that there's class connotations with van life too, which perhaps contributes to the cognitive dissonance. And then Scarlett's just put as well, I grew up on Dale Farm, and what happened to us what was horrendous when I was a child. Yeah, completely agree with you. And yeah, it is really strange, isn't it? Because people are, like you said, moving towards that sort of nomadic lifestyle. They don't want to be controlled by the government. They don't want their children to go to schools, and they want to live that van life. And how that is seen very positively, and yet our way of life not so much. And in fact, what is the statistic, Doreen? Is it something like 90% of gypsies and travellers now live in bricks and mortar? And I think that is part of that, isn't it? The stigmatism and how hard the government make it for us to live that way of life, which we will talk about as we go through the presentation as well.
Yeah, and thank you, Scarlett, for sharing. If you want to get in touch with us, you know where we are.
Yes, yeah,
Look
I
us up on
remember
the
watching that
website.
in the news. And
I wasn't sure if people knew what or where Dale Farm was. I know it's in Essex, isn't it? But it was a community. It was an area where traveller communities lived. So thank you for sharing, Scarlett.
Yeah, thank you, Scarlett. And if I don't know if I put our email addresses on the slides, but Mark, Scarlett, if you're interested, yeah, please get in touch if you want to, Scarlett. Next slide, please. So yeah, thankfully the situation with Pontins was challenged, and they formally apologised to travellers over discrimination. I think there's a bit more information on the next slide about this. Yeah, so it was put through the Equality and Human Rights Commission, which was fantastic. And they did formally apologise and agreed to introduce strict safeguards and guarantee a zero tolerance approach to discrimination. And I don't think, do they even exist anymore? Did they go out of business? I don't know. I'm sure they did, but yeah,
I'm
I
pretty
think so.
sure.
I don't think they even exist anymore, but it was really good that it was challenged. Next slide, please. So I guess that kind of, like Ali was talking about, the positives is that things do get challenged, and sometimes we do get a positive outcome from that. Not that it should have ever happened in the first place, but there have been some kind of, because we are optimists, aren't we, Ali? There have been some positive shifts. And I was saying I think it was to you, Ali, not long ago, that in my local area where I live, and which is actually Northamptonshire, there's a religious festival that happens in a small kind of town called Market Harborough, and it's a Romani festival. And one of the years that it took place, there was a kind of big uproar from local community. They'd shut their pubs down, they'd shut their shops down, and all of these kind of things. And then the following year, when the event was planned again, a local MP put up an appeal to put a stop to the event. And this article went on social media, and I read the comments, preparing myself for those comments that we read all of the time, and thought, oh, here we go. Sometimes I can't even bear to read them. But actually, the comments were really positive from local people in Market Harborough saying this is discrimination. Were you there? Did you meet any of the people that came that were visiting the town? There was local businesses making comments saying we loved this festival. The people were awesome. And we did really well that weekend thanks to that festival. So there are some positives. So yeah, while we're kind of talking about the negative perceptions in social media, it is good to have a balance. So this again, like I said, I'm from Northamptonshire. We've got like a local shopping centre. It's a new shopping centre, state of the art. It's lovely to go and visit. But basically, somebody who worked at one of the it was like a kind of adventure area. You know, you've got kind of shopping centres that now have like play areas and adventure areas and those kind of things. A lady with Romani heritage worked there. Her employers were not aware of that. And she whistle blew because there was a policy across the whole of the shopping area that and it was around security, that should again, capital T, not should a traveller approach or be in the area, that security are made aware, and the code word to use on the radio was tango. If you could go to the next slide. So Charlotte, who was the person that went to the local newspaper, said they were going to use it to target people who are orange. That's exactly how it was described to me by the boy who introduced me. He said the reason it was called tango was because you'll see them. They're all orange. You know exactly who they are. So this is what Charlotte experienced as an employee. But also that for people visiting this shopping area who appeared to have a traveller background, the security team were made aware using that code word tango. And it just highlights the casual nature of which people will be discriminatory, and that whilst I think that no discrimination is acceptable, it does seem to be that for Romani and traveller people it's a bit more normalised, and I say that with some caution because what we're experiencing as a society at the moment, I think unfortunately we're heading in that direction for a lot of people that experience discrimination, but it's just worth a mention, I think. And it's about how I think that how as a society we might respond to that and maybe challenge less those perceptions. Yeah, like Scarlett has commented, thank you Scarlett, it does seem that the discrimination towards travellers or gypsies is not taken very seriously, or that's how we perceive it.
Yeah.
Okay, next slide please. So we have a video to share. It's quite a short video, but it kind of gives you an insight to a bit of history. So yeah, watch the video and we'll see what you think.
It explains it a bit better than what we can.
Yeah,
it's very emotive. It made me cry the first time I watched it.
Oh,
is it that? Yeah.
Are you seeing it?
No.
Not yet.
Okay, you're going to have to bear with me for 2 seconds then, please. I'll stop sharing a second. So just bear with me, please.
No worries. Gives us a moment to breathe and reflect.
Well, I'm just making sure that the only thing that comes up on my screen is what you need to be seeing. That's all. I don't want to be random.
Yes, that's it.
If you could tell me, you can see it now, can't you?
Else.
Yeah.
Gypsies,
yes.
Roma.
Yeah.
Can you hear it as well?
Yes.
Yeah.
Gypsies, Roma and travellers are three words that stand for a lot of different people. Just like with everyone, Gypsy, Roma and traveller people have things in common with each other, and some things that are different. But to understand this story now, it's important to go back to the beginning. Living in one place is a recent thing. People were nomads for 99% of our history, travelling around to survive. Then about 10,000 years ago, something changed. People realised that if they grew crops, harvested and stored them, they would have a better chance of surviving hard times. Where people had tracked animals or travelled with their herds, settled farming became the norm. But not everyone changed their ways. Many people didn't want to settle down, or bad harvests, droughts, floods, war would send them back on the move. In Britain and Ireland, nomadic peoples were probably well established by about 1000 AD. There were the Celtic traveller peoples, the Irish travellers who called themselves the Parvi or Minkers, and across the Irish Sea there were the Scottish travellers, the Norkin. They had their own languages. The Irish travellers talked the Gammon and the Scottish travellers spoke the Bula Ragad. Both have sometimes been called the Cant. Some travellers worked the land. Others were musicians and storytellers who brought entertainment and news to the people of the countryside. Some were horse dealers, tinsmiths and metalworkers. For centuries they lived in tents and travelled mostly on foot. One traditional name for the Irish travellers was An Lucht Shul, which means the walking people. Meanwhile, thousands of miles away, a people called the Roma or Romanis had been travelling west, starting from northwest India. The word Roma comes from an old word Rom, meaning man or husband. It isn't related to Rome or Romania, they just look similar. In the late 1400s, a group arrived in Scotland. They were received by King James IV. They told fortunes, had exotic-looking clothes, darker skin and an Indian language, Romani. They stood out from everyone else and were referred to as Egyptians, a word that eventually turned into gypsies. As time went on, they did much of the same work as other travellers. Some were specialists in other trades, like wicker work, charcoal burning, even pearl fishing and snake catching. In the 1500s and 1600s, there were some attempts to expel them from the land. In some cases, people were deported across the sea, or even hanged for being gypsies. But by the 1700s, Romani gypsies lived all over Britain. Some families mixed with the travellers who were already here. Down in England and Wales, like elsewhere, most nomads lived in tents made from arched sticks stuck in the ground with canvas on top. But some gypsies and travellers put their tents on flat carts to keep them off the cold, wet ground. The traveller's wagon was born. The bow-top became a common sight in Ireland as well as Britain. Later, wagons were purpose-built in various shapes and sizes, mobile works of art. Over the years, travellers went back and forth across the Irish Sea and the borders of mainland Britain. Some worked on the canals and motorways, fought in wars for their country, and many became self-employed. They did jobs like scrap metal collecting, roofing, flower selling, and tarmacking, trades you could take on the move, trades that continue today. Romani people from other parts of Europe continued to come, in small numbers at first, with more arriving in the 21st century. So those three words, gypsies, Roma, travellers, they hide a lot of meaning. They get used in lots of ways, but they're just the names of people, like English, Indian, or Italian. Over the years, some travelling people have settled down. Some move less often, and others hardly at all. But however they live, they take their languages, memories, and cultures with them. They are proud of their roots and their family, and why shouldn't they be? After all, if you go back far enough, There's a traveller in every story.
Thank you.
And we
Thank
hope
you.
you enjoyed that as much as we enjoyed that. And I think as well, I always take away from that as well is I think there's often the misconception that to be a gypsy or traveller, you have to be currently travelling or on the road. And I hope that shows you that actually that it's much more than that. It's a culture and a way of life that's been in place for many generations of our families.
Yeah, it's a sense, isn't it, as well, I think. Like, yeah, a sense that I think is carried in blood. Okay. And I just kind of want to touch upon before we move on. It's such a beautiful video. I think the artwork in it is lovely. But it always kind of, when he says the words, what did he say? Yeah, some were hanged for being gypsies. I just kind of think, right, okay, I hope you picked up on that. We're going to talk a little bit about the history, but just start to put in context with you why, if you connect with the family, why there might be a sense of distrust from them, because there is a long history of persecution, a long history of forced assimilation, but we'll talk more about that. So whilst it was a lovely video, it kind of just, that one sentence always kind of stays with me, and just starts to tap into what we're going to move on to talk about next.
And I wonder as well, Doreen, I just want to say thank you to Scarlett and Georgie for sharing your own experiences as well. And then, like Scarlett, I felt very similar growing up. I suppose, you know, very often, like I could hide my identity, luckily, when I was a child. Well, to some extent, if I moved to a new place and they didn't know who we were, then I could, because I felt ashamed of who I was, because that's how society made me feel. So I completely resonate with that.
Thank you. Okay. So this is just a slide just highlighting the variety really of people and backgrounds, which again is wonderful and positive. Not all of these groups are I don't think recognised is the right word, but within the Equalities Act aren't protected groups as such. It's mainly Gypsy, Roma, a traveller. And I don't know, do we want to say anything about the word Gypsy, Ali,
Well,
in terms of...
We go on in the next slide, I think. Do we talk about
the
Egyptians Act?
Yeah.
Yes.
So it's just a bit of a, to say, like, it's, in my personal life, it's not necessarily a word that I avoid because my family use the word, but some families, some communities take offence of the word, or don't use the word, or would not describe themselves as gypsy because of the negative connotations. I think in some groups, I think mainly European Roma groups, it kind of translates as the word slave. So it's generally a word that we tend to avoid, because we don't really want to cause any upset or offend anybody. So yeah.
Yeah, I do find that I think it's probably fair to say most English gypsies would be fairly happy to be called gypsy, as long as it wasn't in a negative connotation. There's certain words that are very, and I think we probably know the words that are very, people do take offensively because they are used as a slur.
Yeah. And also, like my family, I think we're a bit of a mixed bunch. So I think my mum would probably describe herself as English Romani, but in her heritage, there's also fairground people, as well. There's a bit of a mix. So yeah, sometimes it's quite difficult whenever you're talking about putting labels and boxes. It all gets a bit kind of complicated, doesn't it? So we kind of flow in our family with language a bit, but yeah, this just highlights the kind of the variations. We're getting lots of comments through, which is wonderful. Do we want to have a look at them?
Scarlett's been just so informative. So Scarlett was telling us that there are English travellers as well. She's an English traveller.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Often I'm guilty of using them just interchangeably sometimes, because I know I probably shouldn't, but sometimes I find it just a bit easier rather than going, oh yeah, I'm actually from Romani Gypsy descent. Unless people are actually genuinely interested in that, then I will talk about that. But sometimes
does that change depending on who you're speaking to as well?
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
Okay, next slide please. Right, so this is kind of put things into a historical context, and I do not consider myself a historian, so if there is any historians in the room that wish to challenge me on this, I might become a bit unstuck. But this is kind of like a bit of a loose history, but it's significant, because it is fact though that the Egyptians Act did exist, and it was introduced in 1530, and I know that sounds like a very long time ago, but this act, it echoes in modern society, so it is still very relevant. So it's where so the 1530 Egyptians Act was to banish outlandish people calling themselves Egyptians. So this is where people arrived here. I'm not sure, maybe people didn't know how to describe them, but the word Egyptians was used, and I think there is a perception maybe that that's where the term gypsy came from.
But it was my understanding. But
but people, it wasn't a group of people that travelled from Egypt. So it's just an example again of how things are thought to be factual, but they're not. And then in 1554, gypsies could avoid persecution if they left behind their nomadic lifestyles. So I say this with a sarcastic tone, given the opportunity to leave their culture, their traditions, their norms, everything that is important to them behind, if they didn't want to be banished or sometimes killed for being gypsy. Then the next point is about how I think initially when people arrived, they were welcomed for the art, the music, the dancing. My sister is really into the history of dance and the evolution of flamenco and stolen dance, let's say, and art forms from our descendants, and how people kind of don't really appreciate the origins. Also trade, skilled labour, so people came like as blacksmiths, skilled in carpentry. So whilst initially that was very welcomed, things soon changed, and people were persecuted for what we now know to be ethnicity. And people were labelled as enemies to the Commonwealth and welfare of the land. So I guess that kind of gets us thinking about why were people persecuted, and maybe it's the threat of an alternative way of living life with freedom was a threat to the state, or maybe, without getting too political, could continue to be viewed that way. And as Dan Allen says, targeted by a range of restrictions that endeavoured to limit their freedoms and determine their experience of equality to this very day. So this, although that is from centuries ago, echoes of it still exist in today's law and policies. So so in summary, we're talking about 600 years of oppression in the UK, which first started with the Egyptian Act. And we've seen throughout time the marginalisation of Roman and traveller communities in Europe with the Holocaust, which resulted in the mass genocide of Europe's Roma and Sinti population. I think more recently there's been some positive strides in terms of acknowledging and recognising that, but I think we've still got a long way to go. that did occur, and the impact that it had. More recently, communities have been subjected to policies based on racist notions that we need saving or that we need corrective treatment. So this is about how, you know, there's examples of communities that have been forced off their sites and encouraged to live in houses and such. And also that the stereotype of nomadism imagines the entire community as being involved in criminal activities, irreverent towards religion, harbouring sinister magical powers, and primitive as evidenced in promiscuity, dancing and baby snatching. So there are these myths that we still see play out today. I think it would be fair to say that I say we're in a professional space at the moment, but if we were to go down to our local pub and asked about perceptions of travellers, would probably be told thieves. You know, I remember I lived near lived in a town called Wellingborough in Northamptonshire, and every year that the fair would come along, word would get around, you know, make sure your car's locked, all of that kind of stuff. The fair folk are around. Awful. Any comments on that, Ali, or anything you'd like to add, or should we move on to the next slide?
Move on to the next slide.
Yeah. So this is an example of how this plays out in very recent law. So the Police Crime and Sentencing and Courts Act was changed. I'm still really kind of surprised and disappointed in how this went under the radar so much. This is the law that changed or put restrictions on protests as well. So we're seeing how that's,
to say. That's why I think this was tagged alongside it, whereas the rules around protest was highlighted as one of the main points.
Yeah, and how that's playing out. So previously, before this, if you were to, let's call it, sleep or stay in a public area, or you were considered to be trespassing, it would be a civil offence. So, for example, if a family rocked up on a green space, for example, and complaints were made, which, as we know, very often happens, the police would need to get a court order to move that family along. And then in the Police Crime and Sentencing and Courts Act, this was changed from a civil offence to a criminal offence. There was significant kind of challenge to this, wasn't there, Ali? And even I know that we could probably talk quite a long time about the police, who interestingly have their own social association as well, don't they, internally? Because Romani and Traveller people can be police as well, but even the police, sorry, I'll get to the point, even the police spoke up against this and said that they didn't want to enforce this either. So if you're found to be trespassing, you could be given a £2,500 fine, time in prison, your vehicle, which is
your home,
confiscated. So that was a significant change.
And I think what it doesn't, you know, as some policy changes that happen, they don't really give any sort of background either to the current situation. So there is an epidemic of, well, there's a massive shortage of local authority sites for travellers to stay on and passing places. Not passing places, sorry. That's in the countryside when you're driving, isn't it? There's a lack of sites where you can just stop for a short period of time. So, you know, if you're coming along to see a family member in hospital or go to a funeral, wedding, whatever, there isn't that space where you can temporarily stop on a short-term basis. There are hundreds, if not thousands, of people waiting on wait lists for pitches to become available for them. So they have no choice but to either stay on roadside and risk, you know, the fines, having going to prison, etc., and being moved on, or going into a house, which for a lot of gypsies and travellers who are so used to living that nomadic lifestyle is really challenging for their mental health, etc. And we'll talk about mental health in a second, but it's just worth making that point, that it's not, sometimes it's not a choice for people to be continuously moving. There just isn't the provision available for people to stay with their family as well. If you've grown up in an area, there's strength in numbers, isn't there? And we're having your community by your side. And one quick one as well, it's so hard to get planning permission. So if you say you buy a piece of land, right? If you want to put your caravan on it, you have to get planning permission. Now, if you can imagine how many planning permissions, I don't know how many planning permissions actually get agreed when you're asking for your caravan to be put on a piece of land. I don't know the statistics, but I don't think it's a huge amount. So yeah, there's just not a huge amount of opportunities, I'd say, for people to.
And local authorities are duty bound to provide transient sites. Is that the official?
That's it. Yes.
Yeah, the official. Yeah, transient sites. But many local authorities neglect that duty, or they try to meet that duty by creating a substandard temporary site for people to stay on temporarily. Yeah. With very poor facilities, or facilities that, like, ground that isn't suitable for any vehicle, like, never mind moving kind of trailers and vehicles on it. So really practical things aren't thought through. They don't kind of create sites in partnership with Traveller and Romani people to meet needs. They just kind of want to tick a box, so to speak, so they can say that they've met the duty, and usually in an area that the public are less likely to oppose, which is why you end up near tips or near roundabouts, or close to massive roads. Okay, and that's all part of we probably do touch on it later on, but that's what we see really as dehumanization, forgetting that people are people. So this is, this is just me kind of balancing it out, that change in law has been appealed and has had some momentum, but I don't think it's been thrown out or anything as dramatic as that, but it's just to kind of say that has been appealed, but it still is the way that it is. Next slide, please. So this is kind of starting to talk about how this impacts on people, what a difference all of this stuff makes, and how it plays out in, like I say, people's lives. So in general, the average life expectancy is much lower, health status much poorer than the average white British person, for example, and that Romanis and Traveller people are amongst the most disadvantaged people in the country, have the most poor outcomes in key areas such as health and education. Next slide, please. So research has evidenced that there are extraordinary high levels of experiences of racism, discrimination, and that, like Ali was saying, has a huge impact on people's mental health. To my mind, it's why quite often you'll see families together. Like, if you're facing all of this discrimination and hate and accusations, you going out on your own is less likely. People do kind of stay together as groups generally for quite often their own protection, really. Also, links between hate crime and suicide. Very, very sadly, Traveller and Romani people are 6 times more likely to end their own life. 6 times more likely. That's a massive rate, isn't it?
I think if you speak to a lot of Traveller families and Gypsy families, they'll be able to tell you several people they know that have unfortunately committed suicide. It's really difficult.
Just trying to find, there was a program on the BBC that might be worth a watch recently. It's called Patrick, A Young Traveller Lost. it's a painful watch, but worth a watch if you want to go away and have a look into that. So this is Dan Allen's research that basically evidences also, in addition to poorer life health outcomes, poorer mental health, poorer educational opportunities and outcomes, Gypsy, Roma and traveller children in the main are much more likely to be connected to or known to children's social services. So they're in this slide, Dan does kind of detail the stats on that. So Gypsy and Roma children 1.5 times more likely than all other ethnic groups to be connected to children's services, with travellers of Irish heritage even higher at 2.74 times more likely. So what kind of tapping into there is that even there's different kind of experiences of prejudice within the different communities as well. Gypsy Roma children are 2 times more likely than all other ethnic groups to be considered at initial child protection conferences, and travellers of Irish heritage 3.1 times more likely. And Gypsy and Roma children 2.11 times more likely to live in state care, and travellers of Irish heritage 2.55 more likely. Sorry, I'm not good with numbers, can you tell? I'm having to really concentrate when I say those numbers, but also it's hard reading it, and yeah, also kind of being a bit emotional about it, sorry. But so it's just evidence that more people are referred to social services, then the action is more likely, the next steps are more likely with child protection conferences, and then that translates into more children being taken into care. And there's a massive issue around as well, people when they are moved into care, being moved into families that do not share their heritage and or know very little about the heritage as well.
And I think one of the difficulties is a lack of trust from the families with professionals. So, you know, if you get an initial referral, and I'm speaking from a children's social care perspective, but if you get an initial referral, and there'll probably be a lot more resistance to working with social workers than perhaps non-Gypsy Roma traveller families. And then that can make things escalate much further. And perhaps, you know, there's probably lots of different reasons for that, but it's something to be mindful around getting, you know, starting off on the right foot with these families so we can do our best to get that open working relationship.
Yeah, thank you. Trust is a massive issue. I'm mindful as well. I can't believe how quickly the time's going. We've only got 15 minutes left, haven't we? So yeah. Sorry, Marcia. Next slide. So I'll whiz through some of these slides. You'll get a copy of all of these so you can read them in more detail in your own time. Intergenerational trauma. So this is like Ali was just saying about trust. This is about what is carried through our generations and our ancestors as well through trauma. It was just growing up, I just knew not to trust officials. That was the standard starting point. Don't trust officials. It was ingrained into me, and then I became a social worker, which not sure what that's about, but yeah, it's very interesting.
I think it's
sorry, go on.
Oh, sorry. And so Geordie's put around finding it hard not to recognise stark parallels with how Indigenous families were split up in America and Canada. And it's shocking to see this happening here in 2025. And I think, I'm sure we have lots of people from different cultures and communities here, and you'll probably recognise some of those similarities between, you know, being in that sort of culture that perhaps isn't English, and feeling those sort of similarities that we feel around distrust. And sorry, where
that's a really valid point, thank you. So I won't go into too much detail about this because of time, but the link is there. The link is also on our website, but this is a really great piece of work that was done that identified the inequalities in mental health care. So please have a read of that. Next slide, please. This highlights as well around the whole issue of recording people's ethnicity. So this is about, it's not really, it's something that services, systems, the NHS really need to get a hold of in terms of capturing data and the recording of people's ethnicity, but also recognising that people quite often don't want to share their ethnicity either. So that's also a challenge, and that is very understandable given the history, issues around trust, and the trauma that people have experienced. Why would you openly share your ethnicity if you really didn't have to?
And it's obviously worth noting that some of us are in a fortunate position that we can hide that. I know that sounds like a strange thing to say, but I've always felt that when especially, like I said earlier, especially growing up, that I can hide part of my identity. Or I wish I didn't have to, or maybe I shouldn't have, I don't know. But we are fortunate in that respect, whereas there are obviously a lot of other communities, cultures, ethnicities that can't do that. Just a little thought.
Yeah, and it's something like for my mum, she's very private about her ethnicity, and here I am outing her, sharing her picture, which I always check with my mum that that's okay. But she feels okay with that. She supports because she wants to help social workers understand about her culture and her background and how that affects things and those kind of things. But she doesn't share it in the main generally. But she's getting better at and feeling more confident with my support in kind of challenging when people say something to her. Sometimes if she feels comfortable enough, she will challenge, which is both good to see but also quite scary. Next slide, please. Right, so we've got 10 minutes left, and this is something that we can give you to go away with basically and have a think about and start talking about and potentially using. But it's a model of reflection, objective, movement and action that we've called the Roma model. So this is something that we've come up with in our social work association and all of the people that are involved that are listed there. But it's about drawing on extensive lived and learned experience, an identification that social workers can, not always, can dehumanise Romani and traveller people by associating their lives and cultural more with risk, violence, crime and deviancy. So this is a way, really, a model of unpicking that and having some really open and honest reflection and then translating that into action. Next slide, please. So stage one is about, if you're connected with a family, about reflecting on that with your supervisor or peer. Are we clear about why social work is involved? Are we clear about what's happening? Finding out, is it hard to engage and support the individual, family or community? Are we being open and honest about the negative and perhaps hostile views that exist about the individual, family or community? Are we recognising the individual, family or communities as victims of racism? Are we being sensitive to how the individual, family or community might describe and respond to our involvement in their lives? And are we supporting the individual, family or community needs? And then the objective stage is about the experience of how we can better understand the experience of the individual, family and community, how the family might feel about our involvement, which I'm hoping we've touched on some of this. I hope this is all coming together now. The way that various legal and policy frameworks impact the lives of the individual, family or community, the way that racism and oppression might impact on our ability to engage with the individual or community, the way our own views and values about the individual may impact on accessibility and service delivery, the lived experience of the individual, family or community, such as their tradition, family bonds and relationships with non-Romani and traveller people. Next slide. So the next and the last two stages of this is movement. So what do we need to do differently? So Can we positively explore commonality and difference? Can we identify and challenge racism in our own recording and reporting system? So thinking about the language we use to tell someone's story on their social care records, how we're describing people, and whether our own values and how we see people affect the way that we write about people. Promote a better understanding of the needs and experiences of the individual, family and community. Provide effective and proportionate services. Develop an approach to practice using national and international models of best practice, improve the quality of life, and advance community-based partnerships, which I think we need a lot more of. And then stage 4, what needs to happen for us to promote anti-racist practice, engage and support the individual, work effectively to make the situation better, promote the safety and well-being of the individual, ensure that negative and perhaps hostile views do not influence assessment, protect the individual, family and community from racism, understand how the individual, family or community describes experiences, our involvement in their lives, and challenge structural inequalities. So yeah, that is the Roma model. So just, do you think that might be helpful as a takeaway to kind of think through and use maybe in supervision to ask yourself those questions? Marcia?
I just couldn't find my thumbs up.
And you probably weren't asking me, you're probably asking everybody else. But again, I think I think the Roma model can be used with lots of different people, can't it? Not just gypsies and travellers, but it really gets you thinking about your own preconceptions and power imbalances, etc.
Yeah, thank you. Next slide.
Yeah.
So I won't go into too much detail about this because you can take the slides away and have a read for more information. But we basically did a community of practice training event with best interest assessors, which was fascinating, really, really interesting stuff. And kind of really unpicking and examining how we consider what's in someone's best interests and how perceived ideas about what's best for someone is affected by everything that we've been discussing today. That whole kind of we know best as a group of professionals, when maybe we don't, and how we take into account people's kind of cultural needs. But just from some of the themes, just to touch on from that, was around identifying systemic racism, lack of guidance, language barriers, cultural sensitivity, cultural humility, identifying that there are training needs for best interest assessors. And I think there's probably training needs for AMPs as well, and more training for social workers, I should think. Accessible information and professional practice about promoting social justice by empowering communities. So not only do we focus on that for the individual, but I think as social workers and social care professionals, sorry, I'm mindful we might not all be social workers in the room, but it's about that wider activism as well, isn't it? So it's about the individuals we connect to, but also promoting for a more inclusive system around, and kind of, yeah, doing proper collaboration with all communities, really. Next slide, please. So yeah, that is the conclusion. We did a study that's getting published in the British Journal of Social Work. It hasn't been publicised yet, but I just wanted to give you a little kind of hint of the conclusion, which is still in its final stages of being finalised, but you can read that at your leisure. But the title, Old Women Can't Live in Caravans, that was taken directly from a doctor who said that. His view was that old women can't live in caravans. So basically there was a lady who wanted to remain living in her caravan, but the preconceived idea was that was not possible for an older person, which has massive connotations, I think, and how boldly stated by the doctor. Next slide, please.
So the next slide is the video. Did you want to not do the video and share it with when we do the whole presentation, when we share it on the website, or did you want the video?
I think
5 minutes left.
Yeah, I think there's only a couple of slides. I think the video is the last real. I think the video is significant because what happened is that during that community of practice, a BIA approached us and said, what does freedom mean to you? And it kind of really stopped us in our tracks, because we were thinking, actually, the understanding of what freedom means to communities is probably, and should always probably, the starting point when you're considering depriving someone of their liberty. So basically, we just put this video together. We asked voices in the community to kind of share what freedom meant to them. So I think it would be a good video to end on, but it probably wouldn't give us any time for lasting comments and reflections.
We could always do a couple minutes, couldn't we?
Yeah, I'll put it on.
Let's give it a, okay, thanks.
Freedom means to me the ability to live my life the way I want to live it. You know, obviously without harming anybody else, but the ability to live where I want, to do the work I want to do, to have you know, the family life that I wish to have without being persecuted for it, really. Yeah, that's what freedom means to me.
For me, freedom means not being removed from your family. It doesn't do any good, and the things you lose you can't ever get back. So much damage. Why? For what? I lived in a little caravan in Devorden just after the twins were born. That's when I felt the happiest and the most free, I suppose. That's all I've ever wanted.
Freedom is a right, not a privilege. So why is freedom given to some more than others? Freedom flourishes when I'm free to be me.
Freedom is something you've got to have. It's a basic need, like air to breathe and food and drink. You need it not just to keep you alive, but to feel really well in mind and body. And on top of that, freedom helps you make the most of your potential. You need to be your own master and decide how things are going to go for you. Not saying tread all over other people, but if you don't have freedom, you might just as well be 6 foot under the ground.
Freedom means not being controlled by another, being able to set my own boundaries, to not feel restricted in what I want to do in life or work. It means to honour my ancestral path and to be proud of what and where I have come from. Freedom is a right.
Freedom to me means living with rights and safety wherever in the world I am.
Well, like I just said, I'd like to be able to go and live how I'd like to live and be able to walk down the street and not get insults thrown at you and things like that from other people, from gorgeous. That's for everyone to respect each other with their lives and feel that freedom of life and be able to live where you want to live and not have to be told where you could go and stop, and not being able to go where you want to live and not getting it all wrong now, not to be able to live where how you want to live. We used to, when we were young, we were able to stay in places for a certain amount of time, where nowadays you can't do that, and it's just not freedom anymore, the way of life. And it's a shame, really, because you get treated like dirt nowadays.
When I think about freedom, I think about the chains that others have tied around me, structurally, systemically, through defining who and what I'm supposed to be, but also internally through the impacts of intergenerational trauma. So my freedom relies on others, on you, to stop oppressing me and in shifting the responsibility back to where it belongs.
She'll be able to live her life how she'd like to live it. I'm getting emotional. She wants to live her life how she wants to live it. And if she had her way, she'd live in the caravans all her life, but she never had that choice. That's like that. There you go. Oh, it's difficult, isn't it? You think it get me like that?
I'm glad we showed that.
Yeah, it's just it puts everything into perspective, really, doesn't it? That yeah, freedom and the meaning of freedom for people is different for everyone, really. And I just think that sometimes we might get so kind of drawn into everything we need to be doing, should be doing, paperwork, deadlines, stats, getting to know people, keeping people safe. But fundamentally, it's about the people we work with and what's most important to them. And I think freedom is an absolute starting point, is it not?
Yeah, thank you very much for your time. I know that people have already started to drop off. I know we've run over time a little bit. If anybody has any other comments that they weren't able to get in today and they'd still like them answered, please get back to me and I'll forward them to Ali or to Doreen. Have a look on the timetable, see what other webinars are available tomorrow and Friday. But thank you all so much for your time this afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Doreen and Ali, if you stay for me, please.